Hello and welcome to another edition of the Friday Focus. I'm Daniel Harmson, your host, alongside Kansas football experts Stella Liang and Shane Jackson. We're here to talk about some Kansas football. This week, the Jayhawks sit at 2-4, 0-3 in the conference, and they head to Lubbock, Texas to take on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. But first, before we jump into this week's matchup, let's take a look back at last week, where the Jayhawks fell by 7 points in a close game against number 16 Oklahoma State. And Shane, you talked about it on Tuesday during our podcast, but this team could have a very different outlook had a few things gone Kansas's way.
Yeah, first of all, I don't mean to critique your host and your first try at host, but we're not really experts. I just call us writers. But yeah, you're right. A couple plays had Tevin Shaw not been offsides, had they been able to get that safety. Had Nick Harlow not dropped that pass in the third quarter, a couple of 4th and 1s that you should have went for instead of kicking the field goal. There was a bunch of small things that they could have done right, and you could be talking about a whole different story. Kansas could have pulled off an upset over a top 25 team. The Bowen would have a chance to get that head coaching gig. You probably would just sign him immediately, almost remove that interim head coach tag off him if they had gotten that win on Saturday. But we talked about it. The best thing about it is that, after the game, we were talking about these few plays here and there where if it would have gone the other way, Kansas could have got a win over a top 25 team. And that right there speaks for itself. It's just impressive that finally we can talk about that kind of stuff. And it shows volumes of what Bowen has been able to do in his just short stint here as interim head coach.
And Shane, a big reason why Kansas had a shot on Saturday was Michael Cummings. And I know, Stella, you've been chomping at the bit to talk about your favorite player, Michael Cummings.
Like we've said, maybe Michael Cummings isn't the best technical quarterback on the team, but what he shows in games is that he gives Kansas a chance to win. Now, when you look back at his numbers, I think his quarterback rating sat at around a 35, so not great. He didn't throw any touchdown passes. He had an interception, that one late in the game. But Michael Cummings, he doesn't look, he doesn't look scared. He looks confident. He looks like he can lead the team. He had a couple of long passes. Sure, he overthrew some of his receivers, but I think what you can take out of that game more and going forward is that he gives his team a chance to win.
He does give the team a chance to win, and Clint Bowen talked about how he's kind of the junkyard dog type quarterback. Not, like you said, not the prettiest, but he gets the job done. And in fact, the last time he really showed that ability was in 2012 when Kansas took Texas Tech down to the wire in overtime, losing 41-34. So this week they get another shot at that road victory in Lubbock. And Tech's offense has always been good. This year, maybe a little step down, Shane.
Yeah, this offense has always been scary. Specifically last year, it was just really scary. It has regressed a little bit. When you talk about the offense, you have to focus on the quarterback, obviously. And Davis Webb is nearly top 10 in almost every category. He's number 8 in career passing yards number 8 in career passing touchdowns with 39. He's number 10 in passing completions with 394. And he needs just 72 passing attempts and 19 yards to move in top 10 in those categories. So that's pretty impressive for somebody who's just in his second year with the program. I know Kansas fans would love to have a quarterback like Davis Webb. Now, Texas Tech fans are not as happy with him because he's regressed a little bit, which in turn has made the Tech offense regress just a tad. But Kansas fans are completely jealous of a guy like Davis Webb when they're having quarterback issues of their own. They're on the second quarterback. You saw 3 different quarterbacks take under snaps. Texas Tech doesn't have that problem. So when you have a reliable quarterback, especially in the Big 12, you're going to have a pretty good offense, and that's why Tech's offense is pretty good.
Kansas ran for 390 yards against Texas Tech that year, so that was a big reason why they had a shot. Tech's defense is allowing 39.5 points per game, and there was a big change at the defensive coordinator position a few weeks ago. Stella, your thoughts? Kansas have a shot going against this defense?
Well, I think, Texas Tech's defense has never been a strong suit, but this year it has just been falling apart. You mentioned a coaching change. I think after week 3, they fired their defensive coach. And, they rank last in rushing defense. They rank last in, scoring defense. So I think if Kansas's offense, get rolling like they did against Oklahoma State, they do have a chance because its defense, if there's a weak point, that's it.
They claim to not be experts, but I beg to differ. We'll see these two match wits here in a few games, starting with over-under. Tony Pearson, he got 12 touches last week, and although he wasn't able to break any big ones, He's averaging 8 yards per carry and 12 yards per reception, so getting him in the mix is important. Bowen's been talking about that a lot lately. Tony Pearson's touches this week, we'll set it at 10.
I'm going to have to go over. Although he's had only 30 touches over 6 games, which averages out to 5 touches per game, last week you just mentioned he had 12 touches, 10 rushes, 2 receptions. Now he's being moved more into a backfield role, so I expect him to get those touches more. You may get to that 10 just from rushing, as we saw last week. And Bowen has made a concerted effort to get him the ball. He's clearly their best player on the offense, an offense that is struggling. And if you give Pearson at least 10 touches or more, you have a good chance to win the game. We saw that last week.
I'm going to have to disagree with you there, Shane. I'm going to take the under. All year we've been hearing, Weiss and then Bowen saying that they're making an effort to give Pearson the ball. And, it hasn't really happened. Now he's moved to the backfield and he only got 10 rushes. He's competing with time with 2 other backs, and I just don't think it's going to happen this week.
So it's some dissension on Tony Pearson. Kansas points scored. We'll set it at 28. Tech's defense, as we mentioned, has been struggling a bit, and Kansas's offense put up 20 points last week, which is actually the most points they've scored all year against a Big 12 opponent. So some signs of progress, but will it be enough? 28 points.
I'm going to have to go under. They scored 34 in the season opener, which is their most, but since then they failed to get more than 24. And we saw in probably their best offensive game all year against a top 25 team, they scored just 20. So their offense still struggles at times. Even though it looked really good throughout the game, they weren't able to get enough firepower, and you saw them settling for field goals instead of getting into the end zone because they still struggle at times. So you can't expect the offense to just make tremendous strides going forward.
I'm going to have to take under on that also. They're on the road, and I think, the offense, it did all right at home. And I think on the road it's just a totally different environment, and they're having trouble scoring in the first place.
So if Kansas is going to want to win this game on Saturday, it's going to have to be a defensive struggle, and we might be able to get that this week. We don't know. Kansas defense points allowed 30. Last week, no points allowed. For the last 2 weeks, no points allowed in the second half aside from kick returns. Will we see that same trend, only allowing a little over 2 yards per play in the second half and 11 yards in the fourth quarter against OSU?
I think so. I think this defense is just really good. Tech does average nearly 30 points a game, but Kansas hasn't allowed more than 30 other than outside that West Virginia and Duke game, which I don't expect their defense to have that same type of performance. Although it is on the road, which does scare me because Kansas does play completely different on the road, this defense is really good, and it's been the strong suit of this team all year. So I'm expecting if Kansas has a shot, their defense has got to step up.
We're going to have to disagree again there, Shane. I'm going to take the over on that. Texas Tech is averaging over 30 points a game. And their strong suit is quarterback, and if he gets a couple of those throws, they might be able to score a lot of points.
Michael Cummings went for 280 yards passing last week. Buy or sell? Does Michael Cummings start the rest of the season for the Jayhawks?
I'm going to have to sell. You still got Baylor, K-State, Oklahoma, and TCU all left, which is the cream of the crop of the Big 12. So I'm expecting Kansas to struggle against those type of teams, which means you're going to put Kozar in those situations. You may have to switch things up, as we've seen when Kansas often struggles. That seems to be the go-to position. Not to mention, we saw Cummings take some shots last week, and he looked shaken up at one point. That Kozar even started warming up. He got really antsy on the sideline, started warming up with the ball boy. So I'm expecting, with Cummings not being able, he takes a hit, but he's not able to avoid the hit. I'm scared that Cummings could get injured, throughout the season.
I'm going to buy on that one. Cummings has shown to be the better game quarterback. So sure, Bowen has said that you have to earn your playing time. And you know what, Kozar might go in for a couple snaps. TJ might even go in for a couple snaps, but I think it's Cummings' starting job.
So much has been said about how there's been a lot of improvement on this team, and it may have not manifested itself in wins, but I tend to agree. Stella, are you buying that the 2014 team is the best since Mangino's years?
I think I'm going to have to, Dan. I think they've shown the progress. I think, it hasn't come out in wins, like you said, but they've shown that their defense is solid, and if their offense could just step it up just a little bit, I think they can. They are.
Shane?
I'm also going to have to buy. All you have to do is win one more game, and you tie the high number of wins you've had since Mangino, which was 3, and that was last year's team. I think this is a much better team than it was last year. Now, granted, I don't expect that to carry on in the next couple of years because, as we've talked about a lot of the times, a lot of this defense is leaving. Some of the offense players are leaving. The big offense players like Pearson, And so you're going to see a lot of young faces in the next couple of years. So although they are improving this year, it seems like Weiss really handicapped his team by getting a lot of JUCO transfers. So that's not necessarily going to carry over for the next couple of years.
Over 200 KU alums showed up in support for Clint Bowen in his home debut last week. Shane, is Clint Bowen going to lose his interim tag as head coach and become the next coach next year? Indulge me.
I'm going to have to sell that idea. Although I think he has a strong case with Tech and Iowa State. All he has to do is get at least one win. You might be able to get the job there. But at the same time, we've sat there and listened to his weekly press conferences or after the games, and he'll come out and straight up admit that he has no idea about this offense. He has no idea what to do, and it's really John's job. And although I do respect letting coaches coach, the head coach still has to have a say. You still have to have somewhat of an idea of what's going on the offensive end. And I think that if there is going to be a way he can win it, he has to do it on the offensive end. Not to mention, he's still super young. And I think he's still that one job away. Have him be defense coordinator for another few years, and then when you fire that coach, I think this is his job.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they have to give him a chance next year, Dan. I think, he's shown that he's gotten the support. He's shown that he can rally his team to win for him. And, you say that his weakness is offense, but at least, he admits it. He gives John Reagan, the reins. He doesn't try to butt in where it isn't his expertise. So I think they have to give him a chance because of what he's shown.
One of these possibilities has actually come to fruition. Let's say that I asked you this question 3 weeks ago. Kansas football winning on the road, or Edgar Frederick Ned Yost III managing the 2015 All-Star Game. Which is more surprising to you, or which would be?
Well, if you asked me 3 weeks ago, I would say that, KU winning a road game. Because you have to think that it would happen at some point. And Ned Yost, some of his decisions are quite questionable, Dan. And, I don't know how he got to where he is now, but it's working for the Royals.
Yeah, if you had to pick which one you'd be more surprised with, it's Ned Yost. Because, frankly, that wild card game in itself, that one-game elimination was really scary enough that you didn't expect the Royals to be in this situation. Although they had good matchups in the postseason, it was scary because of that one-game wild card, and you saw it when they were down 7-3. But KU has a chance with these road games. This week, actually, against Texas Tech, is a very vulnerable team on the road. Kansas can end that streak this week.
Everybody, they haven't missed yet on a prediction this year. It's prediction time. Texas Tech, Kansas. What do you got, Stella?
I have Tech winning this 31-10 until KU proves that they can win on the road. I think that on the road they just look more tentative, and I think that, they say that they don't think about the streak, but it has to be weighing down on some point, and I think Tech has to win this at home.
I was at Big 12 men's basketball media the other day, and they said you have to pick Kansas until someone proves them wrong. In this situation, I think you still have to pick against Kansas until they prove you wrong, because Kansas has yet to win a road game in a very long time, as it's been mentioned in every weekly presser. So until they prove us wrong, we're going to have to keep picking against them. Not to mention their offense has still struggled at times, even last week. So yes, I'm going to say Tech wins 24-13.
Two 2-4 teams that, in my eyes, seem to be going in different directions. Texas Tech had a 14-point lead last week and surrendered 17 unanswered points in the last 6 minutes. They are the most penalized team in the country, and Clint Bowen didn't even talk about the road troubles for the Kansas football team, so I don't think it's even an issue on their mind. I've got Texas Tech 27, Kansas 30. I am calling for an upset this week, and I think Michael Cummings, like I said before, I think he gives you a shot. We'll see who's right. I'm mixing it up this week, going away from their predictions, but it should be a good one. Thanks again for joining us. Check out Kansan.com for more coverage of KU football. Should be a great one, and have a great weekend. Rock Chalk.